All right, Dalton, our number 4 safety in college football, my guy, my Penn State Nittany Lion himself, Kevin Winston Jr. Not only, I'm not being biased, Dalton, he is one of the best safeties in the country because, man, he's good at everything, dude. There's really nothing you can say about wrong in his game right now.
No, I agree. I honestly, in a lot of other years, he might be number 1 on a list like this. I think he's actually the most fundamentally sound safety in the country. And you talk about a guy, a 90.6 run defense grade that was third best, an 86.8 coverage grade that was 13th, and a 92.8 tackling grade that was the best by any defensive player in the country, not just safeties. It's rare. Like a lot of times we talk about guys who miss tackles, and that's something they got to work on, and it's a flaw. Kevin Winston's tackling is like a major plus. Like there's very few guys, I remember like Luke Kuechly back in the day, like on that level, there's very few guys who you talk about their tackling and you're like, wow, like he just doesn't miss, right? Tied for the second best overall grade in the country last year. And the strength for him is that there's no major flaws. And I think there's the floor for him gives him a first round ceiling. Like it's just, there's no way the more I watch him, unless he had some just disaster year or he had to play through an injury or something, got hurt or something, there's no way to me next year I could see Kevin Winston falling outside of the top 50 at the latest because he is the most fundamentally sound safety in the country. Like coaches are going to love him. Like when he's the guy you watch play to play and his highlight tape might be more of like tackles and gritty stuff, but you watch him play to play, it's a clinic. It is like a textbook direction on how to play safety at the college level and even at the NFL level. He is so fundamentally sound and on a great defense too. He is the star of the back end of Penn State's defense.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, we mentioned before in our Xavier Watts video, check it out if you haven't already, the Notre Dame safety, his biggest issue was tackling. He missed 18% of his tackle attempts. Kevin Winston Jr. missed 2% last year, which is insane, which is second among all safeties in the country. So Xavier Watts missed 9 times as many tackles as Kevin Winston Jr. did, basically. You mentioned the 90.6 run defense grade, third among FBS safeties. He was the only safety in the country who had 85-plus grades as a run defender and in coverage. He was a really good coverage player. He puts the safe in safety, Dawn, honestly. Like, he just does everything at a high level. He's never going to mess up out there. And you hear all this, and you go, okay, usually those kind of guys who are really fundamentally sound. One of the biggest negatives is athleticism. 99.9th percentile athlete last year. This guy's an elite athlete. Hit 22 miles an hour on the GPS. So freak athlete, and his fundamentals are so good already. That's the biggest reason why, Dalton, he was in our first round mock draft when we did our way too early mock draft for 2025, because he's so good at the position already, and he's so athletic. He's got a high ceiling and a super high floor, man, which I think makes Kevin Winston Jr. easily a top safety in the country. And if it wasn't such a loaded position, you're right, he would be probably number 1 on any other list heading into the year. But it just happens to be a loaded safety group that we'll talk about our top 3 later in future videos. But man, he's so good. What are the negatives, though, Dawn, with Winston's game right now, do you think?
There's so few with the combination of fundamentals and athleticism. And I think you mentioned the floor is super high. It's top 50. He's going to go in the top 50 of next year's draft. To get into the top 20, I think just show us a few more plays on the ball, right? Through 2 years at Penn State, he's got 1 interception and 3 pass breakups, right? Which, if you're not being targeted a lot, is a decent total. I believe he was only targeted 20 times last year. But if he has a year next year, let's say where he has 5 interceptions and 6 pass breakups or something like that, somewhere in the higher range of where these safeties come in at, he's going to go in the top 20 of next year's draft. He's so fundamentally sound. We just need to see the ceiling of him starting to turn the ball over, even if it's forced fumbles in the box or whatever. I don't care. Just like a handful. It's almost like bring us the highlights, right? We have so many guys who it's like, oh, you have a mountain of highlights, but like then you also have a mountain of lowlights too, right? Winston doesn't have any lowlights. So if you just show us like a couple of freak plays that'll just get you noticed by the scouts, you're going to be a first-round pick because the floor is so stupidly high. But that's probably where I would say is maybe for once, we don't say this often, but just the counting stats and making plays on the ball, which sounds funny coming from us because we never really go that route.
No, dude, honestly, and even with that, Dawn, I mean, I think a big thing was they didn't really target him that much because he had 4 forced incompletions last year, and that was a 20% forced incompletion rate, which was 97th percentile. So when he had chances to make the plays on the ball, he did. It's just, like you said, he just didn't do it enough for most people to really notice him as a top safety in the country. But you mentioned it, man. I mean, I hate to go back to the strengths, but like you look at the stable metrics we have at PFF, and there's a lot of them for safeties. And I'm just going to rattle off the percentiles he's in. 99th percentile, 95th percentile, 99th percentile, 91st percentile, 86th percentile, 96th percentile, 79th percentile, 97th percentile, 99th percentile, 92nd percentile. That's the stable metrics. Like, that is ridiculous when he's like 95 plus, it seems like, for every single metric, man. It makes no sense. So Kevin Winston Jr., man, learn the name if you don't already, because this guy is a stud for Penn State and could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, the first of multiple safeties that could be first-round picks in next year's draft. Kevin Winston Jr., man, learn the name because he is a super underrated player right now and is certainly one of the best safeties in college football.